Hey, legends, and welcome back to another episode of the Gathering podcast.
I am pumped for this episode. Today we're talking with Veronica Romney, a marketing mastermind and the author of Identity Marketing, one of the most highly rated sessions at the Gathering in 2024.
We talk about brand loyalty, we talk about connecting with your customers, and we really help brand leaders shift from the mindset of buy this to be this. You're gonna learn a lot about her 4-step process and how you too can be more connected with your customers.
Let's get into it.
Let's do it. Hello. How are you, Veronica?
You know, just living the high, I'm just been talking about identity marketing nonstop. And so I'm kind of a high of like how well people are responding to this alternative way of marketing and talking about what it is that you do without feeling like you have to pitch slap somebody for your attention. So that's exciting.
Did you say pitch
She
slap?
said pitch slap.
Pitch slap,
It's
baby.
so
pitch
good.
slap.
I'm stealing that term.
It's gonna be a good episode when we start with pitch slap.
Yeah.
So good. So excited to have you here, and congratulations on the new book. I am waiting for mine in the mail and I cannot wait to dive in. You're one of our top rated speakers at the Gathering, and just really excited to dive into what identity marketing is today and hear all your amazing insights. So congratulations on the book. And I think a great place to start would just be for you to share with us, like, what is identity marketing?
Yeah.
I know it really champions this idea of helping brands evolve from this thinking of buy this to be this.
Yes, ma'am.
So maybe you can share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so identity marketing, I'll define it just so everybody knows what I'm saying. It's connecting your brand so deeply with your consumer's identity, who they are, but also who they seek to become, that they will literally desire and be buried in your brand. Which is why when I came to the Gathering, my opening story was about Billy Stanley, someone who spent 18 years planning his incredible funeral that made the news because he had a very distinct vision for how he wanted to be remembered. And that vision took 3 extra grave plots, 18 years of planning. And so I want you to picture this man sitting on top of his beloved Harley Davidson taxidermy style in a custom-made plexiglass coffin that him and his sons made, because, you know, family bonding, being lowered into the ground with a crane while his Harley hog friends and his loved ones watched him and said goodbye, because he wanted to not only ride into heaven, but he wanted the world to witness him do it. And that's exactly what he accomplished. So like identity marketing is beyond, like clearly Billy wasn't buried a Harley Davidson buyer 43251. He was buried a hog. Like that's what I mean. When your people connect so deeply with the values of your brand that they will literally be buried in such identity.
So can you share the, like, just to picture that visual too, like this is this is what you're doing on the weekends, like with your kids is amazing. Can you share the difference between brand identity and identity? Like what's the differentiator?
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're asking that, because I feel like oftentimes when you're talking to really smart marketers or, you know, those of us in the business space, like when we hear the word identity in our world, we think automatically of brand identity. That is the most popular reference. But to me, brand identity, you're in control. You're 100% within power and control to externally differentiate yourself from everybody else. This is your choice in logos and colors and typography. Like this is you determining the gift wrapping on yourself, your brand, your offers, your products, your services. Identity marketing is not an external showcase, although people do wear it externally. It's actually an internal self-concept. It's how I identify on the inside. And it's not about your brand. It's about me, the consumer, who I am, who I wish to become, what I call myself, how I want to be remembered, like my legacy. That's the difference between brand identity on the outside, identity marketing, speaking to the inside of somebody. Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, so do you think about this as a playbook that a brand would adopt to go and connect with an existing psychological community, or is this like a way of marketing that invites people into relationship with your brand? Like which direction does it flow? Does that make sense?
That's a really good question. And when we wrote the book, I had so many fun stories in my head because I remember the Harley Davidson story from when I was like an undergrad marketing student when I was 17. So like for whatever reason, my brain held on to that for a really long time. But we actually, in the book, we have so many different scenarios where identity marketing has been leveraged because it's really what you're leveraging is the psychology of identity, right? We have a comeback story. Like actually, Barbie is a great example. Speaking of The Gathering, and watching that presentation, to me, screamed the fact that they stopped focusing on the real identity that was at play. It was never about the stereotypical, blonde hair, blue-eyed Barbie's identity. It was always about a little girl's potential to be anything that she wanted and not just strictly be a stay-at-home housewife, which is what little girls' futures really looked like when Ruth Handler made it for her daughter Barbara, right? So we talk about comeback stories, how identity can be used to do comebacks. We talk about how identity can be leveraged to disrupt saturated marketplaces. Like we have this incredible story of a $15 hour intern who literally used an army, the Smash Army, to generate over 500,000 followers in less than 60 days, and then like rebranded her entire company, which was never on the docket to begin with, right? So we can leverage identity in the early stages of any business wanting to like literally start from the ground up. We can use it to collaborate and bring identities together like Taylor Swift's Swifties or the 92%ers, which is the podcast listeners of her boyfriend Travis Kelce's podcast. And then they sold it to Amazon for $100 million. Like there's so many ways that identity can be leveraged in all stages of business growth. You're never too far away from Genesis to use it, and you're never too early to use it as well.
I think it's important to go back, like the Barbie story and how they got it wrong. I think that's maybe if you could just share a little bit more about that for our listeners, because I think it's a really great example to share how brands are maybe thinking about this in the wrong way and how this can be a really powerful correction.
Well, sometimes, again, it's not because you get to this place in malintent. It just happens. Like there's the genesis of how every business story begins, which is usually a very founder-driven story. And then once the company amasses a certain level of fame, notoriety, and financial success, and now leadership expansion beyond the original founder, you're susceptible to that, to kind of lose sight of why we're here in the first place. And so I thought the Barbie story was really interesting to me because they were successful kind of from the gate, and then they became pretty tone deaf without like not that far out. And, the story was like in the same year that you have like the Real Beauty campaign that was like, earth shattering by Dove, and real women, real bodies, real skin was the same year that like Barbie was like on Sports Illustrated, like the Barbie itself, stereotypical Barbie. And it's like, ooh, we're missing something's happening culturally and we're not here. Like we forgot who we were always meant to serve, which is, again, this little girl's potential to be a doctor, to be an astronaut, to be whatever she wanted to be. And so when I teach or share this story on stage, I love to compare the two clips in the recent, Warner Brothers kind of Mattel Barbie movie, because at the beginning, Barbie finds Sasha in like high school and she like lays into her, like destroy Barbie Sasha. And she's like, you're sexist this and that, capitalistic that. I'm like, I cannot believe Mattel let this in the script. Who approved this? But then you contrast that to the end of the movie where Barbie's talking to Ruth's ghost in this kind of womb-esque scene. And she's talking about how it was always meant to be for her daughter, and it was always meant to be for little girls, and mothers stand to see their daughters grow. And I'm like, I don't even have a daughter. This is so emotional. I have boys. But it was just really touching to me. And then I can't believe this. My mother, my Cuban immigrant mother, has pictures of me like at 3 holding stereotypical Barbie riding my pink convertible Barbie mobile. So it got personal for me too. Like, yeah, like who are we really trying to aspire to become? Was I taking, my Flintstone vitamins to have Barbie's boobies? That's why I told my mom I wanted boobies like Barbie. Or did I buy Barbie because Barbie helped me have potential for what I could be as an adult? Interesting, no?
Yeah, it's wild. And I think in in this day and age, we have a visibility to the way that community identity propagates
Totally.
like we never have had before. And
Yeah.
so, I think I've got a million questions kind of going around in my head, but one thing I'd just like to touch on is, there's been this idea of like identity politics, like using, in the larger public sphere, using baseline social cues to try to align with different people. You speak about the subject with much more nuance than that, it seems like. Can you just separate that idea for people who are listening? Because it seems
You
like there's
brought up
difference.
politics first. For the record, Owen did it. Wherever this goes next is your fault.
I'll own that 100%.
So I live in the US and we just completed a very intense, stifling political election, to say the least. Obviously, it has massive global implications. But yes, we just finished our US presidential election. And I also very recently went on social media to kind of do my own like marketing autopsy, so to speak, of what happened, or at least from my identity lens perspective, not in any type of endorsement for either party because it has nothing to do with me. But I just thought it was very interesting that I thought one party, unfortunately the losing party, I thought put too many chips on identity politics, which was what we're saying is really like demographic politics, because you look a particular way, because you are aged a particular way, because your gender, your religion, your skin color. I mean, like, think about like demographic, the way that you are targeted legally or illegally through like targeting platforms, right? I felt like one party did that playbook, which, to be fair, has been successful in previous presidential cycles, in contrast to the opposing party that didn't so much do it off demographic identities, but more value-based identities, making country safe again, healthy again, great again, add whatever you want again, because then it became this like almost personalized slogan. Like, well, look at the slogan have its own comeback, right? Do you like, a lot of people don't know this, but that slogan that's very famous now for one individual was actually used by Ronald Reagan first. It was "Let's make America great again." And it was a very inclusive call to action, as opposed to kind of think the sentiment around it today. But he swept. I mean, he had 44 states the first time he ran. He had 49 states the second time. Like, we were that unified as a US country not that long ago, using the same slogan as we are today with a very different feeling around it. So it's just very interesting to me. Identity was used both, one more demographic, which is what I think you're referencing, identity politics, versus what I'm talking about, identity marketing, which, besides the fact that I'm a 37-year-old Cuban woman, mother, that's not how I see I don't walk around in demographic definitions. I'm multi-hyphened. I have so many other core values that drive the decisions that I make to affirm who I am.
Well, I think that's why I bring it up, not to bring politics into the conversation, like as so to speak, but to I think recognize that consumers are starting to become aware of the tricks that are deployed in media that feel very surface level, feel inauthentic. Yes. And I think what you're saying is this is not that. Like, true identity marketing is an actual understanding of your customer rather than mimicry. Is that maybe how you would put it?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that one of the stats or science that we kind of sourced and quoted in the book was just how distrust is probably the number one emotional sentiment of buyers today. There's so many behavioral scientists that have shown that, like, literally when I go to Amazon, I'm on purpose filtering the reviews to read the negative ones before reading the positive ones. And so, like, we are inclined to look for the dirt because we don't inherently believe the positive yet. And I think 2024 was that year. We had when things get tight, you get more discerning. You have to, out of necessity. But the good news is, with a more discerning buyer base who doesn't believe that your $2,000 course will change my life because I tried that before, right? The good ones, the good providers, actually, I think we're the ones that stand to gain the most, because in a more discerning buyer base, you win, because once they do their Sherlock Holmes findings, you're going to come on top versus some of the sleazier ones that just had better marketing messaging at the beginning.
Yeah, there's a big correction in 2024 for sure. All that liberal spending from our couch while we were at home.
With government checks,
Right?
Yeah.
Tell us about the identity code process. You introduced this in your book. Can you walk through this with us and how we can apply this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't set out in 2024 to write a book. That wasn't on the agenda. It's a massive undertaking. Oh my gosh, 35,000 words is like, I felt very 42 weeks pregnant by the time it was all done. I'm like, get out, just get out. But I knew that it needed to be more than just like another keynote for me as a speaker. Like I could have just kept it as identity marketing, a keynote, and I'm going to change your perspective on how marketing should be done. Our people are done with buy this marketing and buy this energy, and they're here for be this and become this energy. But here's my thing. And this is probably more to do with my identity. I identify as somebody who executes at a very high level. And if I'm not getting things done, I don't like myself. It's really interesting. Like I don't want to just be inspired. And so as much as I love speaking, it's my number one favorite thing to do in the whole wide world. The con of speaking is that it stays in its inspirational capacity. Like you're inspired, you have this new paradigm shift, but that's all that it really materializes for the most part. And then everybody goes back to their office on Monday. A book is a different type of a container because the book, not only do you have more space, you can also then give out a framework, a how-to, a prescriptive manner in which people can take action off this concept, not just like it. And so even though I didn't identify as a writer, I've spent an extraordinary amount of time and energy and money to become one because ultimately the wallet achieves what the mind believes. And so I wanted to put a framework that anyone at any stage, whether you're a Fortune 100 company or an intern making $15 an hour like Nicole, that they could take a simple 4-step type of framework that they could actually leverage the psychology of identity. And that's what we did. So it is 4 pieces. You find it, you prove it, you name it, and you dress it. You complete the total personification of this identity.
What do you mean by find it? Like, just maybe unpack that one for us. It's kind of...
I would love to unpack that, Owen, shall we? So this is what's interesting to me. Secret shoppers, that's like $1 billion-something industry. Companies pay an obscene amount of money to people to go through Walmart, go through the store, go through your virtual store, and then report back. And I know that most marketing departments in the slow season might have audit themselves on the list. But too few companies do it with what I would say is an identity lens. So like when you're secret shopping or you're auditing your web presence, you're really trying to figure out, do people like me? What are they saying about me? It's very brand me. When I talk about find it, or at least in the step, we want you to identity secret shop yourself. If you don't exist yet, then we're going to have you identity secret shop those who are serving the same person you wish to serve and sell as well. But you're doing it with an identity frame, meaning not what are they saying about me, what are they saying about themselves? What is their sentiment around who they are, who they wish to become, both positive or negative? I'm a bad mom. I want to get better at parenting. What does that actually mean? Not everyone's going to scream, I'm a Swiftie. It's not going to be that bloody obvious. And then you name, the group Swifties or Hogs or whatever. It's never that obvious. But honestly, if you've been in business for a little bit of time, the truth is your people have already done the work for you because we can't help ourselves. We self-label all the time. It's how we literally socially connect is by saying, I'm this, well, I'm this too. And so when I have my participants go through one of our workshops and they do the find it step and they have the identity lens of secret shopping themselves, they're shocked how much people will speak in identity alluding or identity affirming type of language that then they can extract what will eventually be that markable identity in the future.
So the gold is in the comment section.
Dude, Swifties she didn't call them that. That was them. They called themselves Swifties before she ever did. Hogs, they called themselves Hogs because there was literally a writers group that when they won their races would tie an actual pig, a hog, to the back of the bike in celebratory manner. This is before PETA. But then like finally Harley, you know, the actual business and brand decades later was like, oh, we should name this or have this mean something. And now it's called the Harley's Owners Group. So like most times your people will actually come up with a name for themselves, like a great nickname.
And you're saying that I think that's great for, I had no idea that that's where the term hogs came from, by the way. That sounds like it deserves some investigation. But the like if you're not Harley Davidson and you don't have customers that are already sort of celebrating you in their own language and in their own rituals, what's the move for a brand that's trying to create that sort of connection with their customers?
Okay, all right. Now I got to tell the Smash story because it's so good. So Nicole, the intern, she's an actual woman. She's a young 20-something-year-old marketing professional who lovingly I think she's more famous on the internet streets as like Nicole, the intern. It's because she was working for a non-alcoholic beverage company. So like it was called Mixology, and it was like an alternative to mocktails, right? And she was literally a $15 an hour intern. And they are absolutely punching above their weight. They don't have a ton of venture capital money at all. And this is like a $1 trillion category or like a $1 billion non-alcoholic beverage category. It's insane. You want to talk about saturated and like super competitive, right? And yet here they are trying to like do the impossible. So she starts an Instagram account from zero, calls it the best marketing strategy ever. And she goes on social media day one and she goes, I have 60 days to hit 500,000 followers and prove to my boss that this is a better marketing strategy than his entire like plan. And they had expired cans of Mixology and like, here, intern, do something with social media with this. So she goes to the backyard. The production value is zero. She goes to her backyard with a baseball bat and an expired can and she just smashes it. That's it. That was like day one. Day two, she does the same thing. Nothing. Day three, 30 million views. Because, you know, the internet. Viral. Lightning in a bottle. What the hell is happening? But the thing with like hitting it or getting a viral thing like that is like, it doesn't mean the next one is going to be viral. Like now what? Now what was the magic that created the first one? It was the same template as the first two that didn't go viral. Like, what are we doing? She dressed up as Kill Bill. She dressed up as a piñata unicorn. Like they were just trying like the stupidest, goofiest things. The only consistency is that she kept on like ruining these expired cans. She found an old like a Halloween military hat. And so she had the idea, I'll put on this stupid hat and then I'll treat the can like a grenade and like throw it over the fence. It kind of interesting. This is why you have to pay so close attention to the language of your people, not just how clever your marketing messaging is and all your alliterations, because I'm a big fan of alliterations. But the comments start changing to like almost like military type language. We're in the fight with you, Nicole, like down with Mike the boss. Like we've all had a Mike the boss, you know what I mean?
Yeah. People were rooting for her.
They were rooting for her, the underdog, the intern, proving it, sticking up to the man. The narrative is there. And again, the can is like also in this narrative. So she wears the hat. The language starts to change. So the next day she wears the hat again. On day 15 of this entire journey, she proactively, because she started to know, and she's just smart and it's intuition, she goes, hey, Smash Army, hashtag Smash Army, right? So now she's connecting, smashing the can with this military stuff that's happening, because she's noticing, and then she puts it together in this identity. It's adopted. That's really critical. It's adopted. Everyone starts using the hashtag. Fast forward in 60 bloody days, 527,000 followers, $0 on ads. Gary Vee talks about her randomly on a podcast. And then he gets on a table and smashes the can and officially joins the Smash Army. Like they are literally, you could go to the website and buy merch and join the Smash Army. It is a whole thing. So much so that they have changed their entire company name from Mixology, because nobody can pronounce that, to Smashed because of the Smash Army.
Had you heard that story before?
I haven't heard that.
Oh, it's so good.
That's amazing.
So she's the sweetest, kindest. I had her and Mike on my podcast, the Remaker podcast. If you like the story, like wait until you actually hear what was like. Gary Vee tried to recruit her.
Right. Yeah, no kidding. She's the highest paid intern ever.
Yeah, it's so good. All because of an intern.
Yeah, I think like when I hear that story, I think one of the things that's interesting is like she kind of connects to the nature of how people how people tell stories or how they relate to one another. Like even just thinking about your adversarial boss, even in a humorous way, like she's kind of hitting on some common veins that exist in the psychology of their
So
target
good.
audience, or I guess, and then you just start like introducing new conversations until you hit it. Basically, is that kind of
Well, this is what we teach in step 2, right? So step 2 of the framework is, even if we had a great idea or you started to notice things in your secret shopping findings, we still have to go through a validation process. If not, you're going to waste an obscene amount of money in updating all your marketing collateral. Nobody adopted anything. You can't just call them the Pepsi generation. Like, they're not going, no, I'm not your generation. Thank you very much. Right? Like, we've seen bad examples where it's when forced, it doesn't always work, even with a lot of money behind it. So what Nicole did, I think that was so great, is she promoted what she found in the comments to her content, and then let the content seek out the validation. No different than how like a comedian will workshop their jokes before you ever see it on like stage on Netflix. You'll never see what's on Netflix is because it already gone through like these dirty rounds of little hole in the wall clubs just workshopping these jokes. It's no different. We're not a comedian in the marketing world necessarily, although I do try very hard to be the funny friend. But we do have social media as kind of that testing ground for validation and adoption signals.
I love it because it just allows people to
Play.
play and roll out imperfection, and it's not some like perfectly polished marketing campaign or plan, which can fall flat. Like you can spend all this money preparing behind the scenes, and then it's like wah wah.
Wah wah.
It's like, hey, community, help us name this product. Help us do like, and just like playing and enrolling the community to be a part of something bigger. And I think I think that's where your real true advocates can really come from. So, oh man, taking a page out of Nicole the intern's book for sure.
one of the ones I'm curious about would be like Nike. I'm not sure, like the stat I heard was that like up to 80% of their customer base will never do exercise. Like short of like,
So
maybe walking to
crazy.
the bus or whatever it might be. Like they've maintained their personality and their identity as like an athletic performance brand where their revenue is coming from like a completely different community of people. So can you reconcile that for me? I'm curious how you would make that
I
fit.
love Nike. We actually use Nike in 2 ways in the book. I think Nike's phenomenal at using identity marketing for its consumer products and obviously for people purchasing their stuff. But actually, one of the cooler stories with Nike is that there are certain employees within the organization that are so diehard that appendage their values so deeply, their identity so deeply with that of Nike, that they'll literally tattoo the swoosh on their skin, and they're called Ekins, which is Nike spelled backwards. And so we have a section in the book where it's like identity beyond marketing and sales, which is like identity-based leadership, identity-based cultures, identity-based teams. So Nike's a really great example of like internal and externally leveraging identity for the most positive. One of my favorite movies is the one with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck called Air, right? The story of how they got to convince Michael Jordan of like against all the odds to choose Nike to represent him and his basketball shoe versus Converse and Adidas, which were like the dominant, because Nike was still a running company. They weren't really like a basketball shoe yet, and they hadn't gone into all of these different verticals beyond running. It's a great movie. Matt Damon is brilliant as usual. I'm a big fan. He can't really go wrong for me, hopefully, knock on wood. But he has this really great monologue, really great, just powerful scene. And he says, a shoe is just a shoe until somebody steps into it. And then it has meaning. We don't need you in this shoe for your greatness. We need you in these shoes so that we can feel great. And I'm like, damn, like what a great way of relaying that it has nothing to do with the shoe. Like, let's be really clear. It has nothing to do with the actual tangible product. It's about how the shoe makes me feel about my own potential to fly like Michael Jordan. And I think that's what Nike does a really good job at capitalizing, which is why they partner with so many athletes at all levels. I mean, they represent over 5 figures of athletes at this point. And it's not so much because I want to be Serena Williams or I want to be Michael Jordan. It's because in some ways, those products represent me being whatever it is that I wish to be. Like it is a self-actualization product more than it is like an actual shoe or clothing.
Aspirational. Yeah. Who they want to become.
Yeah. So good.
That makes sense. Veronica, for anyone listening right now, like a brand leader, marketer that is so interested in this, I mean, aside from buying your book, where do you recommend the first place that they start? Like, how would they really start to think about like how can we connect with our customer or like embody some identity marketing within our culture? Where do we start? What's the first step?
Yeah, this question actually came up in one of my my experiences that I host where you can like master the book in less than an hour. So I like basically perform, identity marketing. And that was one of the questions we got right afterwards was like, where do I even begin? Like whether I'm big or small, like where does one begin? And to me, again, there's nothing more fruitful than just immersing yourself in the people. Like, this is what we call Chris Nealon, right? He's like a brand anthropologist, but like legitimately social anthropology is a real practice where people immerse themselves in cultures to learn of them. And the thing that doesn't get any attention, at least not to the degree that I think it deserves, is that I think we talk a lot about brands rebranding. That's very popular. Like we're going through a rebrand. When I was at the gathering amongst the peers that I was sitting with, like at different sessions, like, oh, we're going through a rebrand right now. Oh, we're going through a rebrand. I'm like, oh, everybody's going through a rebrand. But the person who actually is going through a rebrand is your buyer. And no one's talking about that. Like who I was pre-pandemic, who I am today, who I was before my sister got her breast cancer diagnosis, who I am after that. Like whether you're forced into a rebrand or we are collectively, globally, all going to be forced through a rebrand, like your buyer is changing deeply, fundamentally, internally. And so like what happens when your ideal customer avatar doesn't realize how ideal they are anymore? And no one's really giving too much attention to the fact that the consumer has rebranded. And so I think that like, it kind of like, I chuckle, but like a lot of established brands will tell me like the stuff that used to work so well isn't working anymore. What happened? I'm like, well, you haven't touched your marketing messaging and your positioning in how long, and yet your buyer has fundamentally changed. So I think at a minimum, secret shopping yourself, again, not because we want to know what they think about us, which is I think what a lot of surveys will do. I think it's more like immersing yourself in your buyer and what they are actually like, what they actually say about themselves, what they actually want for their future today versus what they said years ago or 6 months ago.
Yeah, like I think about the idea of customers in transition is like it's probably one of the most ripe areas for like opportunity. I think about like new moms, and there are certain like product categories where you're so
Great
sticky
example.
if you can attach yourself to them. Like if you're the first diaper brand that they walk out of the hospital with, chances are you've got them for the rest of their kids, like which is potentially 12, 15 years of, well, maybe not that much, but like a lot of diapers, right? Or a lot of clothing or a lot of shoes, whatever the things are. So I think that's an interesting insight to think about, like, where is your customer's identity changing, and is there a way that you can actually influence how they solidify their identity?
Owen, you're a genius. You know what you just reminded me of is Volvo.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Dude, so I was not a Volvo buyer, and then I had kids.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to, okay, and I don't say this to be in any way, shape, and form disrespectful to anybody who's listening who has a minivan, but I personally did not want to be a minivan mom.
Right.
But here's the interesting thing. This is where I'm talking about, like, we're multi-hyphened identities. And this is, I went from not identifying as a mother and now I'm a mom, but I want to be a great mom. I want to be a mom who really prioritizes her children's safety, but also I don't want to jeopardize like my coolness and my sexiness because, I don't want to, let it go. So I'm like, well, it's interesting. In my car shopping experience, literally, this is why Volvo got me. And I'm on my third or fourth at this point. Like I'm never leaving. It's because Volvo hit all the spots for me. Yes, I was a great mom because that's one of the safest. The XC90 is one of the safest bloody vehicles I could ever put my children in. And I'm the sexy mom that drives the Volvo. I kid you not. Did you see their commercial they did around the same time that Jaguar kind of imploded themselves when they had this really emotional commercial where a woman finds out for the first time that she's pregnant. She tells her partner, like, oh my gosh. And this really beautiful scene. And then she almost gets hit by the Volvo car, but it doesn't because of its safety protocols. Think about the way that those actors were casted. Really pretty mom, soon to be mom, really beautiful female driver. Come on. Did they not nail it? They nailed it.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about. Like that's the outward showing of identity marketing right there.
Yes.
What's the identity she wants and what does she want to hold on to?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, one of my favorite stories was kind of in that vein was I think it's Jif peanut butter.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like a completely stable product category. Like these are giant companies that fight for like fractions of a percent of sales or market share year over year over year. And then Jif comes out with a simple ad that just says, choosy moms choose Jif. Like if you care about your kids, if you care about what you're putting in their lunch kit or any of those kinds of things, then you're going to buy our brand. And it says nothing about their process, any product claim. There's no rational message that supports it. It's a completely sort of emotional inception to the customer that clicked with their identity, how they view themselves as a mom.
Well, and it fortifies this idea that like what we do, but also more importantly, what we buy is really just an affirmation of who we see ourselves to be. Like everything that I do is really just affirming my self-concept. This has been studied many, 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 many times. In fact, James Clear in Atomic Habits, I think makes this argument probably one of the best. I mean, like right from the jump of the book, he's like, outcomes-based habits don't stand the test of time. Identity-based habits win. And so if you're trying to get fit, you will not be working out February 1st. But if you identify as a fit person, you are working out January 1st, June 1st, September 1st, you're buying Lululemon, you're eating a particular way, you're going to a particular restaurant, you're not going through fast food. Why? Because you identify as a fit person and I have fit level behaviors.
Wild.
So good.
So good, right? It's just
So
juicy.
good. It's so juicy. Veronica, we could talk all day about this and just nerd out on all these case studies because they're so good. We will link your book below for anyone that everyone needs to buy this book. Take it on with your team. We'll make sure you get the links. But I want to just sort of switch gears here a little bit, and I would love for you to share a little bit about your experience at the gathering because I personally, when you and I met and I was listening to your podcast, another plug, Veronica's got a great podcast for all our marketing friends out there. And I reached out and you're like, how do I not know about this event? What is this gathering? I'd love for you to share a little bit about, just your experience this year attending as a speaker and how it's amplified some relationships for you.
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I felt I didn't know who you were and you were so sweet. You're like, I listen to you all the time. I have this event that I'm a part of. Would you ever want to speak? I'm like, oh, you're so cute. What? What event? And then I like, you show me the website and your former speakers. I'm like, well, now I'm the idiot. Like, how have I not heard of this thing? Like, oh my gosh. I felt like I speak on the marketing circuit. So I'm like, how have I not heard of this event? And it's this gorgeous in this location with these level of powerhouses. Are you joking me? So that's number one. Number two, then the imposter syndrome crept in. I'm like, what? Because all of these humans are representing brands like Yeti and Barbie and Reddit and name XYZ it. And I was like, I'm Veronica representing Veronica Romney. But here's the magic of the gathering. It didn't effing matter. Everybody is so nice. So you Canadians, so down to earth, so approachable. Like you're in the hallway and you're talking to the VP of Global Creative from Pinterest. Oh, you're on the elevator, or you're sitting there and having some like charcuterie board at the hotel and you're sitting next to this powerhouse and you're like, you're in charge of like a $500 million brand. Where's your security detail? But it's not the vibe. It's like, that's what I love about what you said about keeper of the vibe. Oh, it's one of my favorite little word truffles. I love that. Like, oh. But yeah, like these people just understand that this is proximity and intimacy is the vibe. And when you're in high proximity and you're seeking intimate, highly valuable relationship-based connections, you're not there to pitch slap anyone and you're not there to gain or take. You're just there to give. And I love The Go-Giver as a book. I love that concept to just give, and don't ever count back what's being reciprocated necessarily. But I will tell you, since I have left, my life has changed. I mean, I'm not saying that to be dramatic, although maybe my Cuban is coming out. But like legitimately, I've now had so many people that I met in the hallway, at the table, in the corner, and they've now been a guest on my podcast. I've had people champion my book when I'm like, stop it. That's so kind. I've been paid to now come out and fly out and like do a private workshop of identity marketing for just them and their team. Like the opportunities have exceeded every expectation I could have imagined, all because I said yes to you inviting me to come. But I was also very intentional. I really, like I told my husband, like, I won't talk to you for 5 days. I'm not like, I literally like disconnected and took everything off my agenda, no meetings, nothing. And I just wanted to be fully immersed and so intentional in every conversation because I knew that the value was that great.
You understood the assignment.
I was the keeper of the vibe.
You were the keeper of the vibe, yes, which is what we count on with our speakers. It's so amazing. Well, I'm so happy that you followed that yes and you came out, and I look forward to having you back this year. I know you're going to be an alumni facilitating some conversations too, and we've got some great collaborations in store that the community can look forward to too. I do have one last question just to close us out this for this conversation, and that is our theme for this year is about winning the future. Mm-hmm. And we say it through the context of like winning the future together. Mm-hmm. I'm curious for you, what does winning in 2025 look like for you?
For me personally, or what you think for our
for you personally, and then maybe for the community as well, like for the marketing community, what do you think brands need to really think about to win 2025?
It's interesting. Okay, so for me personally in 2025, I think I get so discouraged, or it will be often very deflating when people tell me, when I tell them like, oh yeah, I'm a marketer, I'm like, oh, I hate marketing. I'm like, oh, like, oh. And I think it's because, you know, when Seth was on my podcast, he's like, we deserve it. Like marketing has done this to itself. We deserve the bad reputation of being manipulative in this because we've done it. We've hurt people in the process of not fulfilling on what we promised and selling them into something that we had no intentions of helping them achieve. And so, you know, I really genuinely hope with every fiber, like that identity marketing is like a breath of fresh air, because I felt like a lot of people have even questioned whether or not staying in the game. Do I really have to resort to urgency and scarcity and fear mongering and like all of these crazy salesy type of tactics just to get somebody to buy from me? Has it come to that place? I'm like, no, there's still space and room for great ethical marketing that you are really speaking to somebody's core truth of who they see themselves. Like I promise. And so I for me personally, I really hope that identity marketing gives people hope that great marketing is still yet to be explored and discovered and utilized, right? Like that's for me personally, that's why I did what I did. And I mean, birthed this baby, 10 pounds, 6 ounces, right? For marketing as a whole and our beloved community, to me, the marketing space is one of the most generous industries, communities that I have personally been a part of. I know there's bad eggs. And when I say bad ones, meaning they wouldn't do if they weren't getting paid. But there's so many of us that would do it day in and day out, even if we didn't get a dime, because we believe so deeply that marketing literally has the ability to change culture. I do hope that our community understands the mantle that we carry. We are the gift raptors of the business world. We are the ones that bring messages, beliefs, values, you know, to consumers. We literally can change cultures. It's wild. And that's a mantle that I think too few understand the full impact of the responsibility in which we hold. And so I really want marketers to elevate how they see themselves, see their abilities, see their power, influence. You're not just talking about return on ad spend, and you're not just cranking out another report or spreadsheet. Like it's so much more than that. But I think too often we get stuck in the weeds of what we do every single day. And we lose sight of just how powerful we are especially for the future generation. And so I think that's really important. I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. Like the marketing that I put out, or me helping Burger King in a private workshop, or what Pinterest is doing with their filters. Like there's so many great examples of how we are literally shaping the identity of the next generation. And we should not take that for granted.
Yeah, nor take it lightly.
Mm-hmm. No, not at all. It's not flippant. It's not just a job at another place. It's more than that.
Amazing.
So good. Thank you so much for your time, Veronica. Appreciate you, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Make sure you grab the link below and get yourself a book of identity marketing.